Hi, friends. Andy Paul here, host of the Sales Enablement Podcast. Next up for you, we have social sales master Brynn Tillman. As a former sales trainer and personal producer, Brynn adopted all of the traditional sales techniques and adapted them to the new digital world. She guides professionals to establish a thought leader and subject matter expert brand, find and engage the right targeted market, and leverage clients and networking partners for warm introductions into qualified buyers. Today, Brynn will show us how reps can master LinkedIn for sales referrals to capture warm leads. Now, let's get into it.
Welcome to Ring DNA Selling Forward Virtual Summit 2020. In this program, we're going to talk about how to master LinkedIn for referrals. I'm Brynn Tillman, and I'm going to walk you through some powerful tactics and strategies and really implementable things that you can do right away that will help you leverage your existing connections, your clients, your networking partners, your centers of influence to gain access to your targeted buyers. Make sure you pick up a copy of this deck plus some other resources at linkedingift.com. We're going to start with building a good referral network and then mapping out your ideal prospect on LinkedIn. Because if we don't know who we're going after, it's really difficult to make sure we pinpoint and get the right introductions. Then we're going to go after client referrals. How are we identifying who our clients know that we want to meet? And I'll walk you through the process of not just mining their connections, but having the conversation with them and getting permission to either get that introduction or permission to name drop. And we're going to talk about networking partner referrals. We all have them. Vendors that sell into the same buyers that we sell into, that we want to leverage to get warm introductions into their clients. And we want to give those as well. So let's get started. Let's first talk about the goal. So the goal of this program is leveraging your existing connections to start more sales conversations using LinkedIn. That's it, right? That's where we want to get. Because if we can get in to buyers, targeted buyers of people that we know we want to have a conversation with through either referrals, introductions, or permission to name drop, we come in at much higher level and convert many more of those to actual conversations than almost any other method of prospecting. So I'm going to just start with the Rolodex story. When I started in sales, I was working for a company called Dun & Bradstreet right out of college. And I started in an inbound call center, taking about 100 to 120 calls every single day. And it was really order taking. But then I was promoted, or so they called it a promotion, because now I was outbound SDR making 80 outbound calls every single day. And I liked sales very much, and I loved the conversations I was having with my clients. But I really fell in love with sales when I made it to the field. Well, I remember sitting across from one client, and this is like 1992, staring at his overflowing Rolodex, thinking if I could get my hands on that for 20 minutes, I could identify who he knew that I wanted to meet, ask for introductions, and I'd never have to make another cold call again. But in 1992, it was not politically correct to say, hey, Mr. Client, can I thumb through your address book? Fast forward, however, more than 20 years later, that's what we have with LinkedIn. It's this online Rolodex of our connections, and the ability to search and filter them to identify who knows who we want to meet. And we're going to take you through that today. How do you identify who knows who you want to meet and start those conversations? So first, let's understand who we are talking about. So this is your network. First, there's you. This is your account. Then you have your first degree connections, which, by the way, have to be mutually accepting. So either you reached out to your first degree connection and they accepted your connection, or they reached out to you and you accepted theirs. Once you do that, generally, unless someone turns off their settings, you have access into their Rolodex. So you can search their second-degree connections. That's where we're going to play. Now, LinkedIn will also point out thirds, which are friends of friends of friends, right? And we're not going to play there because there's so many in that second degree. And those are people that are connected to people you know, or generally people that are already in your network and you've had some exposure to. And we're going to really bring that down to ideal people for you to ask for introductions into those second degree connections. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, I keep saying clients and networking partners, but there are lots of different people that can refer you. Obviously, your clients, when we get client referrals, that's pretty much as good as it gets. But centers of influence, people in your network that have a lot of connections. Maybe they're ambassadors at chambers of commerce, or they're local speakers or national or global speakers that you've got a connection with that already know, like, and trust you. There's industry leaders, people in your industry, maybe that are speakers at industry events or conferences, but maybe they're trainers in your industry, right? So who are the people that are seen already as leaders that you can build relationships with? Your networking partners, if you're part of a BNI or any kind of networking group, that's a great place to start. Identifying and maybe getting introductions from your clients into their vendors. Who else are your clients buying from? Actually, that's number 7. I just jumped ahead. So the networking partners, we broke that out. Community leaders, those are like presidents of chambers of commerce or associations. Coworkers, if you have non-selling coworkers, they are absolutely as excited about you making a sale as you are, because they don't have a job if you don't make a sale. Well, maybe not as excited, but they like to contribute. And those vendors, the vendors of your clients that are selling to other clients like them, those are people that we want to build relationships with and ultimately build a referral relationship with. So we're going to talk about 2 primary strategies. I sort of dropped this a little bit earlier, but 2 strategies to gain access to those buyers. The first one is actually introductions and or like an actual referral in. And the second one is permission to name drop. And I'm really loving number 2, and we're going to go through both. So the first thing we want to do before we actually get started is we want to take a look at all of the people that we are already connected to that might fit one of these categories. And the best way to do that is to export your connections. I'm going to take you through how to do that. It's about 8 steps. But once you export your connections, you're going to have an Excel spreadsheet that has first name, last name, company, title, and the date you connected. And once you do that, you can build out categories or columns in your Excel spreadsheet and put them under, are they a client? Are they a prospect? Are they someone that's made a referral? Are they an ideal referral partner? And so we can start to categorize our connections. Now, 75–80% of them will kind of be left by the wayside. Maybe we're happy to be connected, but we're not going to actively go after them for referrals. But I want you to identify who you're already connected to that you might want to start conversations with that can lead to referral conversations. So let's go live, and I'm going to show you how to export those connections. So once you're in LinkedIn, you are going to click on the My Network tab. After you do that, you're going to click on Connections, Manage Synced and Imported Contacts, Export Contacts, Connections, Request Archive. You will put in your password and click Done. Once you've done that, in about 10 minutes, you're going to get an email from LinkedIn that says your archive is ready. You're going to click through that, and when you get there, it's going to bring you back here where this request pending will turn to download archive. Once you do that, it'll download as a zip file. You can open it up, and there'll be a CSV file that you can open up in Excel. And that's where you're going to get a list of all of your connections. Those steps are available here. You can see on the screen, and if you go to linkedingift.com, you'll be able to download these steps. Okay? The next thing we can do is develop a search string on LinkedIn. And this is where we actually search our own connections. Well, search strings you can use anywhere. But the way we're going to use this today is we're going to search our own connections first to see who we know that might be good referral partners. And we can use these, and this is where we're going to use it a lot, to search our connections. So what is a search string? It's literally a mathematical equation, and the result that you get is a list that matches the data or the data points in that equation. So for example, and by the way, you'll see modifiers. So this one is or. It's like a plus sign in a way, right? So mathematical equation, the word or is our modifier. When we use the word or, we're including everyone, in this case, marketing or sales. We're going to get a gigantic list of everyone that has marketing or sales in their title. If we put it in title, if we put it in search, it'll be anywhere in their entire profile. So marketing or sales gives us a gigantic list of people that match that criteria. Next is and. This makes a very tiny list because they have to have both marketing and sales in their title in order to come up in our search. So, we can refine that search quite a bit. We have not. So I don't use this a whole lot, but every once in a while, if I do a search and I get a lot of consultants, so maybe I'm looking for CFO, but I get CFO consultants, I'll do a not consultant, and that will take all of them out of the list. So this is marketing, not sales. So if the word sales is in their profile or in their title, depending on the filter that we're using, they'll be cut out of the list. Next, quotation marks. So in this case, if we did vice president marketing, more than one term, even just vice president, quotation marks tells LinkedIn that we want to find those two phrases together. So if we didn't have quotation marks and we put in vice president, Miami Vice would come up. But by putting quotation marks around it, it's got to find both or more than all those terms together. And last is parentheses. And just like fifth grade math, we do everything in the parentheses first. So in this case, my search string is the first list is vice president or director. So if I put this into LinkedIn, I'm going to get a list of every single vice president or director in this list. Now I'm going to do, before I do the and, I'm going to do the next list, which is marketing or sales. Now I have another gigantic list. My and says there needs to be one from this list and one from this list to come up in my search. So the only people that are going to come up in my search right now are going to be marketing and sales people that are vice president and director only. Okay, so let's go in, and first we're going to do this with our first degree connections. So if we go in to our LinkedIn, just got to find here we go. And I click on the search bar. Now I can put my search string here if I wanted to, but that's going to then search every single every single term in every single person's profile. But I want to really hone down to title. So I click on people. I did that search and I clicked on people from the drop down, and I'm going to click on all filters. Remember, we're going to do our first degree connections. Who do I know right now that meets that criteria? So I may say, I really want actually English speaking profiles. So I'll do first degree English speaking profiles. You can do geography if you want to. And I'm going to go into title and I'm going to put in my search string and I'm going to hit search. So this is now giving me 1,800 results of people I'm already connected to that meet that search criteria. So this is a great way to re-engage with them, but we're talking about referrals today, and so we're going to come back and show you this from a referral perspective in just a moment. So let's talk first about client conversation and client referrals. When you're ready to ask your clients for a referral, you may want to reach out and say, a little conversation, Mr. Client, I'm so excited that we've been able to help solve X for you and your company. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the way I've typically grown my business has been from warm introductions from my happy clients. I happen to notice that you're connected to 8 people on LinkedIn that I'd love to get in front of. Could I run these names by you? So, absolutely, they're happy to do that. So on the call, when we have this call now, then I'm going to go in and show you how to mine your connections. So, we want to cover really kind of 4 things on the call. What you do and why you want to reach out. Now, if this is a client, they know what you do. Go through every single name on the list. Ask the question, do you think it makes sense for me to reach out to this person? And number 4, get a yes. You can mention me on the call. That's really what that number 4 is. Yes, you can mention that I'm your client on the call. So how do we go about doing this? When we go back into LinkedIn filters, I'm going to actually change my first degree to second degree. And by the way, if I did apply now, I'll do that really quickly just so you can see. This is a side note. There's over 49,000 people and I can see my shared connections. But in this case, I want to see who my client knows. So I have permission from my dear friend Sally Jo to use her as an example. So I have second degree. That means Sally Jo's first degree, my second, the people she knows that I don't know yet, with English speaking profile that meet my search string, and I hit apply. And she knows 161 people that I don't know yet that I might want to meet. And I can drill this down if I want to do location by city, by location. I mean, I can certainly use more filters. But think of the power around this, right? So she knows 161 people I don't know yet that meet my criteria. I'm going to go through this, pick 8, 10, 12, 20 names. I'm not going to quite ask for an introduction. If you notice, the conversation is, can I run these names by you? We're going to go through. I'm going to repeat this. So Mr. Klein or Mrs. Klein, Sally Jo, this is why I'd like to reach out. You know how we've been able to help you. Can we go through these names and we go through, yes, this is a good person. I don't know this person. Oh, you'll love her. Oh, I think he's not there anymore, right? You have this whole conversation. You make your little check marks at the ones. Say, do you think it makes sense for him to reach out to each of these people that we check marked? Yes, fabulous. Can I use your name? Yes, fabulous. Okay, now we're going to say, thank you so much for these insights. I really appreciate it. Of these 5, who would you be comfortable introducing me to? And then you'd have, let's say let's say there's 2 of them and say, would it be okay when I reach out, or 3, to these 3 that I mentioned we had this conversation? So if they say, yes, I'll introduce you to 2, there's 3 more left. Or you can just ask permission to name drop of all 5. You can just say, would it be okay when I reach out to all 5 that I mentioned we had this conversation? I mean, this is really powerful. But here's the thing, never name drop without permission, without reviewing each name, without asking if they think it makes sense for you to reach out, get that yes, get an okay to mention the conversation you just had. You're going to send a connection request to the new person and assume the conversation and schedule the call. So here's what the request to connect might look like. So friend 1 and I were chatting the other day and your name came up in our conversation. True? Yes. She thought it made sense for me to reach out and connect with you, so kindly visit my profile, and if you agree, let's connect. Easy. Once they accept, friend 2, thanks again, or thanks for connecting. I'd love to jump on a call and loop you in on what friend 1 and I were discussing. Here's a link to my calendar. Please pick a time that works for you. That's assuming they want to talk to you because your mutual friend said to talk to you. Very powerful. We can do this with networking partners too. So just like the same search we did with Sally Jo, we can do this with anyone that we network with. In fact, you could send them a message beforehand. I'm looking forward to our coffee meeting next week. Please feel free to look through my LinkedIn connections and make a list of people that you might want to meet. I'll do the same and we can review the list when we're together. Here are the steps to make it easier. Remember, go to linkedingift.com and you'll have this verbiage for you. So I'm Brynn Tillman. I enjoyed being part of this Ring DNA Selling Forward Virtual Summit 2020. I hope you got some real valuable tips and strategies that you can use to get more client and networking referrals. Please reach out. Let me know if you enjoyed this session. I'm still the only Brynn Tillman on LinkedIn. And you can even schedule 15 minutes with me if you have questions at 15withbrynn.com. Thanks so much, and make sure you get a copy of this deck at linkedingift.com.
Thank you so much, Brynn. That was a really great session. I even took a few notes of a few really actionable pieces of advice that many of us could take away. One of the ones that really stood out to me, and even a part of the session that kind of caught my attention, is right there at the end. You mentioned you should never name drop somebody without permission.
Right.
I'm kind of curious, like what is the outcome of missing this crucial step? I've actually missed it myself in the past, but I think for the benefit of everybody here, it'd be good to go through that hypothetical.
Yeah, I mean, there could be a lot of nightmares that come out of that for sure. One of them, even if, let's say, I know the person really well, one of them is that you introduce that you reach out to that person, name drop, and they had some kind of falling out 10 years ago, right? Or there's some bad blood, or they're a competitor, or I mean, there's so many things that can happen that if you haven't had that conversation with your connection, you just don't know. In fact, true story, probably 8 years ago, I did this, and this is when I became really adamant. And I reached out and I said, I'm making up names, but Greg, I see you're connected to Joe. Shared connection, love him, da, da, da. And I got back a message that said I fired him 2 years ago. So like, just because they were still connected, you're friends, right? So you're like, oh, okay, right? So you want to make sure that at every level. Now, the other side of it is now that person goes back to the person you name dropped and they go, hey, are you giving my name out? Like, that's not right. So, and they're like, no, I'm not giving your name out. And so now I've created frustration between two people. I burned two bridges, right? Like there's just, I could go on and on and on all the bad scenarios, but I think that's enough.
Yep, that totally resonates, and it connects with my experience too, as kind of like a novice back in the day, trying to like connect people for content. We used to take the same approach, but I appreciate the thoroughness of your process here, because I would often find that like if I name drop somebody, they may not actually know them that well. So the response I would get back is like, "Who? I don't know them. Sorry, I'm just connected for some reason. I'm not sure why," kind of thing. So
Right.
made a ton of sense to me. So I'm curious, like, what advice would you have for maybe someone who feels a little uncomfortable going through this process with people that they know for client referrals? Like, how would you kind of suggest they warm up to the idea and get started?
Yeah. So start with the people that you're comfortable with, right? You probably have 8 or 10 names in your coffer. When you export your connections, as we walked through, make a column of maybe your warmest market, people that have referred you before, maybe clients that just adore you and you know it, right? So I'm a big fan. A lot of people say step outside your comfort zone. I'm a big fan of fill your comfort zone first. Once that's filled, then we can have overflow, right? So do what's comfortable first, and then when you do that enough, that will ultimately bring you to more comfort once you want, move a little bit further and a little bit further over that line.
I love that. That makes a ton of sense to me, and I'm sure that's a really great way to approach it for a first try, even.
And you can say
go
to
ahead.
someone, you can reach out to someone in your network and say, I just took a class, I learned how to do this, can I practice this with you? Right?
Going meta.
Yeah, right. Why not?
Yeah, that's great. So this is a good question. How often would you advise reps go through these processes to update their target lists or kind of their immediate referral network lists?
Well, I mean, if you're inside sales, your field sales, are you in networking groups? Like that's such a broad question, and it's different for almost everyone. The key, I would constantly be building my referral list, is I would say across the board. And you can do that by asking your clients, who do they use for other services that are potential referral partners. So for example, like for me, the best referral partners I have are sales trainers. Or sales enablement, because when they're out there, they're doing all kinds of training, and then they'll say, well, what about LinkedIn? And they're like, talk to Brynn, right? So I know that every time I get into a client where I'm training a sales team, there's a good chance at one point they had sales training. So I want to meet them. They're also people I can refer. So I'll say to my buyer, whether it's the VP of sales or marketing or the CEO, have you ever had sales training? If so, who was it? Did you like them? If yes, can I have an introduction? So I continually build, and their marketing people are good for me. Like there's a whole bunch of vendors that my buyer buys from that are great referral partners for me, and that I can refer as well. So from that piece of the question, and I think maybe the question had more parts than that, but that's how I would continually build my referral partners. I think you said lists in there. How do we continue to build a list? One of the things I love about LinkedIn is those lists are dynamic. So we can do a search of our second degree connections, and today we get 1,106. And now, maybe someone in my network goes and connects with a new VP of sales. So then I forget what I said, 1,106 is now 1,107. It's just dynamic. I save that list, and I can either bookmark it, or I drag and drop that list into a desktop folder. I bookmark them. So now I have that list I can go grab, and it's dynamic. So if new people meet that criteria in my network, or maybe I connect with someone new who knows 24 of them, and all of a sudden my list grows. So I think, were those the two questions? Did I get those?
Yeah, I think so. I think those both provided some good baselines. It sounds like it's a good idea to just maintain it as a regular process, even if it is going to vary from industry to industry or role to role. All right, well, we've got time for one last question here. I apologize if we weren't able to get to all of your questions, and I see a couple more in here we'll probably need to follow up with via email, but this last one I think is good. Again, considering that everything's going to be different from role to role or industry to industry, it still would be interesting to know, is there like a rule of thumb or a suggestion on how many times you can go back to one of your first degree connections with the list of names to see who in their network makes sense?
So I love that question. And when you're using permission to name drop, you can go back to the well a lot more. When you're asking for actual introductions, it's much harder, right? But you can always go back and say, hey, thank you so much for the time that you gave me a couple weeks ago. The 6 names that we landed on, I was able to have 2 conversations, and it was really helpful. There are 2 more people that came up that here are their names. Can I ask you, what are your thoughts? You don't even really have to have that conversation again with them, because you can even say in your email, same question, do you think that it's a good fit for me? And can I use your name? And you can just drop them. They can go back, yep, both of them are good, right? So you can go back to the well, or have another conversation. And by the way, if someone makes a referral, make sure you're thanking them, and filling them in. So typically when they make an introduction, but even when you got permission to name drop, if after those 6 or 8 people that you've reached out to, let them know how many you had a call with. And then, so if you go back to the well, it's not like you didn't communicate in between. You also want to ask them, how can I help you? Are they interested in referrals as well? Maybe there's something else that you can do for them. So you want to make sure they feel like it's not a one-way relationship.
Never a bad piece of advice to be thankful and grateful to the people that help you out. So on that note, I feel like I should thank you for so much for this really valuable session. I think I speak on behalf of everyone who attended. It was super helpful, super useful, a lot of great insight. and we really appreciate it.
Awesome. And then if they want a copy of that deck, they can just go to linkedingift.com, and the deck is already uploaded waiting for them.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for attending. That concludes day 1 of our Selling Forward session. Be sure to check back in with us for tomorrow. Got a whole lineup of 11 more sessions for you all, and I look forward to seeing you all online later tomorrow and throughout the rest of the day. Bye-bye,
Awesome.
everyone.